On March 30th, 2015, Liu Yiran, an 18-year-old Chinese international student in California, unexpectedly received a message from an old acquaintance. It was her classmate Lu, someone she had known since elementary school who was also studying in the same city. In the message, Lu invited Yiran to an ice cream shop near the mall, saying she needed to discuss something. In the past, Yiran would have accepted without hesitation. They had been childhood friends, and going out for food or shopping together was normal. But this time she hesitated. Their relationship had changed. They were no longer close friends who could share everything. Yiran considered ignoring the message, but Lu persistently texted her, her tone becoming increasingly harsh and even pleading. After much deliberation, Yiran reluctantly agreed. However, she was cautious enough to bring protection, a male classmate invited along as a bodyguard. Why would a normal meeting between girls require a male protector? The reason would soon become clear. The meeting place was an ice cream shop in a mall near their school. When she arrived and saw only Lu there, Yiran felt relieved. Perhaps I was overthinking things. This is just a normal meeting between friends, she thought to herself. But that sense of security lasted only a moment. The appearance of Zhai Yunyao and her boyfriend Zhang Xinlei at the entrance immediately put Yiran on alert. Her body tensed, instinct telling her to escape, but it was too late. They had blocked the exit. "We girls have private matters to discuss," Yunyao said coldly, her eyes fixed on Yiran's male companion. "You're a boy, it's not appropriate for you to be here. Leave." Faced with the school's notorious Queen Bee, the young man who had been invited as a bodyguard couldn't hide his fear. Without protest, he simply nodded and quietly left, abandoning Yiran in a dangerous situation. Watching her protector walk away, Yiran trembled uncontrollably. However, Yunyao didn't rush to deal with her. Instead, she instructed Lu, who had invited Yiran and her boyfriend Xinlei, to force Yiran to kneel on the ground, while she slowly began making phone calls to gather more people. First, she contacted a close friend from school named Yang Yuhan, English name Coco, saying there was a situation and she should come quickly. Yuhan immediately agreed and said she would bring other friends along. Like a snowball effect, more and more people arrived, all 16 to 17-year-old teenagers, all Chinese international students. In that suffocating atmosphere, Yunyao continued her psychological torture. She grabbed a cup of cold water from the table, poured it directly over Yiran's head as she knelt, and ordered in an icy tone, "Use your shirt to clean the floor." Around them, mocking laughter erupted as they watched the victim struggle to comply in humiliation. The crowd of onlookers grew, making the ice cream shop cramped. Yunyao glanced at the crowd and smirked. "It's too crowded here. Let's take her to the nearby park where we can deal with her properly." No one dared contradict the big sister. That had become the rule. So they grabbed Yiran's hair and dragged her out like an animal. Witnessing this scene, only one Chinese female employee of the ice cream shop tried to intervene, but was immediately shouted down, her voice drowned out. Yiran's last hope vanished. No one could have imagined that the next 5 hours would be the most horrifying time of her life, a nightmare she couldn't have imagined even in her darkest dreams. Upon reaching the park, Yunyao immediately attacked by kicking Yiran to the ground. Immediately after, more than 10 people rushed forward, punching and kicking her relentlessly. Completely helpless, Yiran could only curl up, hands covering her head trying to protect herself. After about 10 minutes of non-stop violence, Yunyao spoke up. "Let's take a break. My hands are tired." But this wasn't a sign of mercy. On the contrary, she ordered the crowd to strip the victim. Yiran was publicly humiliated, while the other female students laughed and took photos of her body with their phones. Yuhan, the first friend Yunyao had called, though only 18, was a cruel figure. Initially, she didn't participate, but stood by smoking, watching with cold eyes. It wasn't until Yiran was naked and in pain on the ground that she suddenly stepped forward and pressed a lit cigarette against her skin. A scream of agony and the smell of burning flesh suddenly filled the air. Another girl took out a lighter from her bag, intending to set Yiran's hair on fire. Fortunately, her hair was still wet from the water earlier and wouldn't catch fire. However, Yunyao didn't let this stop her. She asked her boyfriend Xinlei to go home and bring scissors. While Xinlei was gone, Yunyao forced Yiran to eat sand from the ground, threatening that if she refused, others would take turns burning her with cigarettes. The helpless girl was pushed to the ground, her mouth full of sand, her face red, only able to cry and beg with her eyes. But those around her showed no mercy, continuing to laugh, chat, and film with their phones. Soon after, Xinlei returned with scissors. Yunyao ordered two girls to force Yiran to kneel, made her bow her head, and haphazardly cut her hair. Not only that, she stuffed the cut hair into Yiran's mouth, forcing her to swallow it. The extreme psychological pressure and physical pain caused Yiran to repeatedly gag, her entire body trembling, unable to stand, and her voice hoarse from screaming. According to her later testimony in court, she genuinely believed she would be beaten to death in that park. It wasn't until 5 hours later, when everyone was tired and bored, that they finally stopped. By then, Yiran was covered in injuries, her chest and private areas dotted with cigarette burns, her face bruised and swollen, her hair unevenly cut with her scalp visible in places. You might wonder why a 5-hour assault in a public place didn't prompt anyone to intervene or call the police. In court, the prosecutor explained that the location was relatively isolated, and in March in California, the temperature drops quickly in the evening, so the park was almost deserted. Essentially, no one discovered them. However, a Los Angeles Times article described a different reality. A reporter interviewed an anonymous passerby who said they had indeed seen a very noisy group of teenagers surrounding a picnic table with a vague human figure on the ground. This woman instinctively wanted to approach and check, but was stopped by several people from the group. Though their English was poor, they spoke loudly with threatening looks, telling her not to interfere in matters that didn't concern her. Regardless of intent, groups of teenagers congregating like this are a social concern, especially when they're drunk and excited. They fear nothing, and a wrong word can lead to violence without restraint. Even adult men would take a detour when witnessing such scenes, let alone a woman who happened to be jogging past. So after a moment's hesitation, she decided to leave. However, the first thing she did upon returning home was call the police. 3 hours later, the police called back saying they had sent someone to check, but there was no crowd there, nothing unusual. This cannot be entirely blamed on police inefficiency. The Rowland Heights Park area was known for gatherings that caused disturbances, noise, vandalism of public property, and harassment of passers-by were common. Importantly, these young people were energetic and quick. Seeing police car lights from a distance was enough for them to scatter, making it impossible for police to catch them. This cat-and-mouse game happened continuously, causing police to gradually become negligent, their level of concern diminishing. Perhaps this negative police response gave the group the illusion that the matter wasn't serious. After the assault ended, Yunyao warned Yiran, "Don't report this to the police. Even if you do, it's useless. There are more than 10 of us who can testify for each other that nothing happened. If you alone speak up, the police won't believe you. If you dare report to the police, I guarantee you won't escape next time. If your host family asks about the wounds on your face, say your dear friend Lou beat you. If you say that, we'll all testify for you." One can only imagine that Lou, the male student who had fled midway, never dreamed that not only did he abandon Yiran, but now he would be falsely blamed for assault. As for Yuhan, who had pressed cigarettes into Yiran's body, her threat was even more direct. "My family has people in the police department. Just try reporting to the police and see if we can't kill you." As Yunyao predicted, when Yiran returned to her host family with a bruised face, they were shocked and immediately asked what had happened. After some hesitation, Yiran decided not to blame Lou as Yunyao had demanded, but bravely told the truth. "I was beaten by a group of classmates from school." The mother in the host family, a hot-tempered Mexican woman who hated evil, immediately took Yiran to the police station to file a report. The female officer who examined her injuries couldn't help but gasp when she saw the extent of the damage, repeatedly asking, "Child, have you offended any gangs? Did they beat you up like this?" When she learned that the perpetrators were a group of teenagers, the officer was shocked at their brutality and cruelty. After thoroughly questioning her about the incident, the police immediately decided to arrest all 12 people involved, starting with the ringleader Yun Yao, the most cruel attacker Yu Han, and Yun Yao's boyfriend, Xinlei. When police arrived at the address to make the arrests, they found an empty house. The landlord where the students stayed said they hadn't returned to sleep the night before, and no one knew where they had gone. Suspicions arose. Had the group heard the news and quickly fled? Just as the police were preparing to issue a nationwide warrant, an unexpected situation occurred. A car wobbled toward the house, and out stepped Yun Yao and Xinlei, looking exhausted. The truth came out. After brutally beating Yiran, the couple had calmly gone to karaoke all night as if nothing had happened. Only when they became too tired the following afternoon did they drive home to catch up on sleep, only to find the police waiting at the door. When the police asked Yun Yao if she knew why she was being arrested, she looked confused, but upon hearing Yiran's name, she immediately began cursing in both English and Chinese, saying that after resolving this matter, she would definitely teach Yiran a lesson. One might think there was a deep hatred between them that required revenge to satisfy. But in reality, the source of their conflict was merely an online comment. According to an investigation by Sanlian magazine, the root of this hatred went deeper than people thought. Previously, Yiran had posted a comment on Facebook criticizing people from Shanghai. Yun Yao and her friends, all from Shanghai, considered this an unforgivable insult and secretly held a grudge against Yiran. Yun Yao had called for the whole school to boycott Yiran, and many students, including Yu Han, who later played a major role in the assault, followed this directive. The conflict deepened after an incident 6 months earlier. Yun Yao had just started a new relationship and enthusiastically posted intimate photos on social media, carefully edited selfies, intimate moments of them kissing, all designed to show off her happy relationship. The post quickly attracted countless compliments. Wow, such a perfect match. Talented boy, beautiful girl, so happy. But amid the sea of flattering comments, one particularly jarring remark appeared. My leftovers that this girl picked up and treats like a treasure. The person who left this comment? None other than Yiran. Just one sentence was like adding fuel to the fire, turning Yun Yao's joyful relationship showcase into a rage-filled confrontation. When she clearly saw who had commented, she became even angrier and responded directly, because the commenter was Yiran. The reason for her anger was that Yun Yao's new boyfriend had been Yiran's boyfriend just 2 weeks earlier. Based on this timeline, one could deduce that the unfaithful boyfriend had been two-timing Yiran, and after breaking up with her, immediately connected with Yun Yao, creating a drama of two girls fighting over one boy. In Yiran's eyes, Yun Yao was a boyfriend stealer who was now boasting about her trophy, which was truly infuriating and hateful. In a moment of anger, she typed that comment. Yun Yao immediately responded, calling her fat and ugly, a loser who couldn't keep her boyfriend, don't blame others. Thus, the two began arguing, filled with words like slut and bitch, traitor and weakling. What no one expected was that this online argument quickly escalated to direct confrontation, or more accurately, Yun Yao's one-sided domination. The next day, she gathered several people to block Yiran's way after school, beating her severely, leaving her ribs and nose bruised and forcing her to walk with a limp. Afterward, Yun Yao threatened, "In the future, better not let me see you, or I'll beat you every time I do." The problem was that the two attended the same high school. They couldn't avoid seeing each other. Consequently, Yiran was frequently caught and beaten. Under this continuous assault, Yiran could only yield and surrender, even wearing masks or makeup to hide the wounds on her face, avoiding discovery by her host family. Astonishingly, these 17 to 18-year-old teenagers, though far from home in a foreign land, quickly adopted and developed extreme versions of the cunning tricks and gang-like behavior of professional criminals. They not only imitated the underground world of adults, but magnified the evil manifold, without restraint. As Yun Yao's power grew, her targets expanded beyond just Yiran. She extended her kingdom of terror to many other students, particularly targeting shy female students or those who refused to join her group. Even an accidental glance could bring trouble. A female student who inadvertently looked at Yun Yao while walking was immediately put on her blacklist. Shortly after, Yun Yao and her followers dragged the girl to the basement, slapping her repeatedly until she was dizzy and disoriented. Another time, during a break, a group of students were playing a game. When Yun Yao lost, she immediately cursed at her opponent. When a student responded with just one sentence, Yun Yao punched them directly in the face, causing a nosebleed. This beat what you dislike behavior occasionally met with opposition. But for Yun Yao, those who dared to resist all met the same fate. Violence was the only answer. Just 2 days before the Iran incident, a 16-year-old girl named Mei bravely stood up to stop Yun Yao from bullying her friend. As a result, she was dragged to the park near the school and subjected to nearly an hour of cruel beating, only released when she had cried and begged to exhaustion. Thus, Yun Yao became the dominant force in the school, with many Chinese international students lowering their heads and walking quickly when they saw her, afraid of accidentally angering this aggressive and arrogant figure. Of course, among all the bullying targets, Iran remained her primary focus. Even after Yun Yao broke up with that boyfriend and started dating Xinlei, she still wouldn't leave Iran alone. Failing an exam, arguing with parents over the phone, being criticized by teachers, all of Yun Yao's life frustrations were vented onto Iran, using this as a release. In her eyes, Iran was nothing more than a walking punching bag. It must be said that Yun Yao's later court statement that she only bullied Chinese people, never touched Americans, was true. According to some classmates interviewed by the Los Angeles Times, Yun Yao's bullying targets essentially met these criteria: female Chinese mainland international students who had recently enrolled and did not come from major Chinese cities. And when facing Americans, black people, Mexicans, or even Korean Asians at school, she not only avoided confrontation, but often actively flattered them, completely switching from aggression toward her compatriots to cowardice toward foreigners. Besides her simultaneously aggressive and cowardly personality, Yun Yao's ignorance of the law was equally evident. When interrogated by police, she continuously showed impatience, repeatedly urging with an arrogant attitude, "Hurry up, finish questioning so I can go catch up on sleep." Her contempt for the law escalated when she made the outrageous declaration, "Next month, I have to go back to China for my 19th birthday party. Don't drag this out. Sentence me quickly." Faced with this arrogance, the police had to have a lawyer inform her of a harsh reality. "You are facing 12 serious charges: kidnapping, assault, torture. These are serious criminal offenses, not what you imagine. A letter of notification from the school or a few verbal warnings." Although Yun Yao was slow to understand, not all accomplices were like her. Of the 12 students involved, 6 immediately fled upon hearing the news. Some didn't even have time to pack clothes, hurriedly jumping into taxis straight to the airport, fearing that a minute's delay could get them stopped at customs. As a result, the police only caught 6 people: Yun Yao, Yuhan, Xinlei, and 3 other minors who would be tried in juvenile court. As soon as the news reached China, the parents of the 3 main defendants hurriedly flew to the US. And from here, an absurd and shameful drama of saving their children began to unfold. A drama that clearly revealed how the culture of using money to solve all problems had created such monstrous children. In some media reports, Yun Yao's group was described as coming from rich, powerful families, while the victim Yiran was portrayed as a poor girl whose family saved every penny for her education, relying on scholarships to study abroad. However, according to investigations, the family backgrounds of these individuals didn't differ as much as rumored. Xinlei's father, when interviewed, said that their family in China was just ordinary middle class, and sending their child abroad had depleted their savings. He emphasized that truly wealthy Chinese families would have already bought homes in the US, hired tutors and drivers, completely independent of host families, and their children would attend prestigious private schools. However, regardless, being able to pay $13,000 annually for private high school tuition and $18,000 annually for homestay costs means that the parents of these international students in China were at least relatively well off. And knowing that it wasn't a good school with high costs that strained the family financially, why did they insist on sending their children abroad? Shinlei's father believed that, on one hand, it was about keeping up appearances. If others had something, they needed to have it too. If others studied abroad, they needed to keep up. At the time, just because a high school classmate of Shinlei's said his family was planning to study abroad and asked if they wanted to join, Shinlei heard that in America, there was less homework and pressure, and immediately agreed. Add to that the agency's promotional pitch that studying abroad from a young age makes language learning easier. Graduating high school allows direct entry to American universities. Finding jobs and immigration is easier. The parents were convinced and blindly paid to send their child overseas. As for Yunyao, she epitomized the saying, "Behind every troubled student exists a troubled family." According to rumors, when she was young, she was sent to her grandparents in the countryside. The elderly loved the child, indulging her in every way, even to the point of not distinguishing right from wrong. For example, when Yunyao was still in kindergarten, fighting over toys with others, she would hit others without a second thought. As a result, her grandparents not only didn't criticize or discipline her, but blamed the teachers for not watching carefully enough and blamed the other parents for making a big deal out of it. Growing up in such an environment, her character became arrogant and stubborn. When she was brought back to her parents for elementary school, both sides found it difficult to live together. And compared to parents who try to repair relationships with their children using sincerity to gain trust, Yunyao's parents applied a simple and crude method, spending large sums to send her to boarding school, letting teachers replace parents in education. Yunyao recalled that throughout her childhood, staying with her parents continuously was rarely possible for more than 2 days. Otherwise, the house would be in chaos from arguments. Therefore, she also didn't want to stay at home. At school, she was also known for not complying with management. Even in the strict boarding school, she secretly smoked, drank alcohol, climbed walls at night to go out and play, bullied younger students, and stole their pocket money. Each semester, her record of violations would be filled, even requiring additional pages. And when the school reported these issues to her parents, asking them to cooperate in education, they always believed that, "We sent our child to school for you to teach, right? There are no unteachable children, only teachers who don't know how to teach." Then they would say they would transfer her to another school. After all, in their eyes, anything that could be solved with money wasn't a difficult matter. Yunyao graduated from a key junior high school in Jiabei District, Shanghai. The top 100 students in the grade all had the opportunity to enter key high schools, but clearly her grades didn't meet this standard. After graduating from junior high, her parents decided to send her to study in America, contacted several agencies, and finally chose a private high school in Los Angeles because the agency said it was run by a Christian church, had a good environment, and strict management. But her parents didn't think that their daughter's problems had existed for a long time. So many schools and teachers in the past had given up, and at the most rebellious time in her life, they sent her away from parental care? According to a medical report provided by Yunyao's lawyer, in her first year of studying abroad, due to language difficulties, not keeping up with the pace of study, plus personal character issues that made it hard to make friends, under great pressure of loneliness and stress, she became very anxious, suffered insomnia, hair loss, and irregular eating. She begged her parents over the phone to let her return home, but they thought she was being dramatic and told her to endure a bit more, just like in China. The parents blamed her inability to adapt on the school and host family. After contacting another study abroad agency, they decided to transfer Yunyao to a private high school with a higher proportion of Chinese students, so she could communicate better with peers. The host family was also changed from strict Americans to an immigrant family with the view that, as long as there's money, it's fine. After this school transfer, Yunyao's spirits improved greatly. She no longer cried homesick as before, returning to her arrogant and domineering style. Looking at what happened afterward, in reality, she had transferred her anger and insecurity from herself to others, building her happiness on others' pain, using cruelty as a release, establishing her own authority. At the same time, she didn't forget to show off her wealth online, complaining about her Lexus, longing for a Maserati. This subtle boasting also made her subordinates, who didn't have cars or rode bicycles, admire and flatter her, spreading her reputation throughout the school. According to Xinlei's father, his son was originally shy and introverted, but quickly fell for Yunyao's active pursuit. One major reason was that she let Xinlei drive her car. For 18-year-old boys who had just got their licenses and were in an excited phase, driving his girlfriend's car everywhere daily with a queen bee protecting him, how could he control other matters? Therefore, on the day of the incident, although he had never participated in the violence against Yiran, he had never tried to stop it either. When Yunyao ordered him to go home and get scissors, he didn't hesitate to comply. These scissors would later bring prison time for him. On April 14, 2015, at the preliminary hearing at the Pomona Superior Court in California, considering that some of their accomplices had fled to China after the incident, the judge determined they were a flight risk and set bail for each at $3 million. For the families of Xinlei and Yuhan, this was an enormous sum, so they turned pleading eyes toward Yunyao's parents sitting beside them, because Yunyao had often boasted online about being from a wealthy family. But surprisingly, Yunyao's parents were also completely unable to afford this amount. Therefore, Yunyao, like the other two, had to remain in jail, waiting for the next court session. When she learned she would be returned to jail, Yunyao cried loudly for the first time, and her parents wiped away tears seeing this. But being unable to pay bail didn't mean they were completely helpless. By May 2015, when this case was about to reach its second court session, it was suddenly urgently postponed by the court due to a bribery case. The reason was that the prosecutor reported that a defendant's father had been arrested on suspicion of bribing witnesses and would face charges of bribery and obstruction of justice. Although the police did not release details of this case, there were online rumors saying that this parent's bribery targets, besides the victim Yiran, also included the previously mentioned 16-year-old girl named Mei, who had been beaten by Yunyao. First, he sent $20,000 in compensation through an intermediary to both girls on the condition that they would testify falsely in court, saying the bullying was just playful teasing between classmates. After being rejected by both, this parent even threatened, "I also have people at the Public Security Bureau back home. Do you two still want to go back to China?" This approach of using money to solve problems, and when that fails, resorting to direct threats, is truly brazen. Only the American court didn't accommodate this bad habit, and if he dared to continue such bold moves, he'd be prepared to go to jail with his child. Seeing this self-inflicted trouble, other parents blamed the school, saying it was because the school wasn't strict enough, allowing this behavior to escalate step by step, finally causing a major disaster. In June 2015, the court opened a trial again. The main perpetrator, Yunyao, continuously threw angry, contemptuous, mocking glances at witnesses, her boyfriend Xinlei, and even the audience and media reporters in the courtroom, with expressions so varied they were admirable. And when she saw the victim, Yiran, step onto the witness stand, Yunyao stared at her unblinkingly, her eyes very fierce. Not only that, she continuously complained to the interpreter, saying Yiran was lying. The judge, seeing her arrogant attitude, could not tolerate it anymore and warned, "You are not allowed to have any expressions or actions in the courtroom, not allowed to express personal attitudes to the interpreter. These are the rules of the court, understand?" Seeing the judge angry, Yunyao's attitude became somewhat less arrogant. However, all three still pleaded not guilty to the 12 charges, so the case entered the grand jury procedure. It was at this moment that another dramatic turn occurred. 6 months later, among the initial 6 fugitives, one named Lu Zheng was caught. It turned out he hadn't fled back to China, but was hiding at a friend's house in another state. Finally, after being arrested for driving without a license, it was discovered he was wanted by the state of California. Perhaps exhausted by 9 months on the run, he almost without hesitation pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Lu Zheng's guilty plea put Yunyao, Yuhan, and Xinlei in a very difficult position. Because the 4 were involved in the same case, with one already pleading guilty, it would have an extremely unfavorable impact on the trial of the others. Therefore, after 2 months of extended debate between the defense and prosecution, both sides finally took a step back. The prosecutor withdrew the most serious charge of torture and abuse, retaining charges of kidnapping, causing serious injury, assault, while the defense persuaded the 3 defendants to plead guilty. The lawyer told Yun Yao that if she insisted on not pleading guilty, the case would go directly through the court process. If the prosecution won, she would face life imprisonment. At this point, Yun Yao finally realized the seriousness of the issue and was forced to choose to plead guilty. After all, the former option still offered a chance to get out of prison, while insisting to the end might mean spending her entire life with old inmates and female prison bosses. In the end, Yun Yao was sentenced to 13 years in prison, accomplice Yuhan to 10 years, and Xinlei to 6 years. This case became a wake-up call for the international student community and parents. Many schools have tightened regulations on monitoring underage international students while strengthening education about school violence. The most important aspect of this story isn't the punishment or retribution, but the profound lesson about raising children in the era of globalization. When pushing immature children into unfamiliar environments without proper guidance and supervision, we are inadvertently putting them in dangerous situations. They may become victims or even perpetrators of similar tragedies. And that's the case for today. What are your thoughts on these 2 cases? Please share in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.